Hello friends and welcome to another figure study where now I am just about finished going through my, let's say, miscellaneous older shelf. So that's stuff from Cybertron, Energon, Armada, Classics, basically anything like Unicron Trilogy, Classics, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I only have a couple of figures left, and one of them is this guy, and I've been meaning to talk about this guy for quite a while, because I actually got him a couple of years ago. I think I was holding off on talking about him because of the whole triple changing aspect, but what the heck, I'm on a roll today, so let's do it. And as you can clearly tell based on what's on the screen in front of you, and also what the title of the video is, this is Cybertron Galvatron. The reason I went with Galvatron is because I just kind of like the silver and black color scheme a little bit more than Cybertron Galvatron's look. I think that's a really fun deco, don't get me wrong, but I just kind of prefer this. But yeah, here we have Cybertron Galvatron, and I already broke him. I broke him getting ready for the video. It's not a major thing, just there's a tab that connects these little bits together in his other vehicle mode, and when I went to pull him apart, the tab just snapped clean off. I don't think it'll affect the other mode too much, but that's what I'm dealing with. Anyway, here we've got Cybertron Galvatron in his jet mode, spaceship mode, I guess. This very inappropriately shaped vehicle mode. And this thing's pretty big. I gotta hold it pretty far back to try and keep as much of it on camera as I can, but it's a mode that exists. I'm not particularly fond of this mode. I much prefer his other vehicle mode, but it's fun, I guess, that they have it, but it's such a simple tertiary thing that I feel like it doesn't really need to exist. I don't really have much else to say about it. I think I'm going to save the rest of the talk for the other vehicle mode. But I will say real quick, I don't have the missiles that go with this guy. There are missiles that are supposed to plug in here that you can fire that I just don't have. But I do have, I think this is his cyber key. It may be a cyber key and not actually his. I don't know. I'm really bad at keeping track of these things. I don't know what it is with this figure and not letting things go. But yeah, so here we've got a cyber key. I think it's his cyber key, and this is a pretty cool looking cyber key. I like the angular shapes, and the orange sitting inside the silver is pretty cool. And I painted that purple for the Decepticon logo. You can see without the cyber key in place, the top is a little plain looking in terms of color, but that's fine. But I also like that it can just kind of sit there, so that gives it a place to kind of store, and it adds a little bit of a deco to the top here. And if you push it in, these bits pop up and these little sections spin, which is cute. Doesn't really accomplish anything, but it's cute. That is pretty much all I'm going to say about this mode, because I just think it's, you know, kind of unnecessary. But it exists, so we're looking at it briefly. I know both vehicle modes are roughly the same size, but we're going to do size comparisons for them both anyway. So first, here is, let me readjust this slightly, but here is Cybertron Galvatron with the standard deluxe squad, and without even moving things around, you can see how rather large this vehicle mode is compared to a deluxe. And, alright, not surprisingly, it's very difficult to get these two on screen at the same time, but here is Cybertron Galvatron with Cybertron Optimus Prime. I'm going to bring this back in again. And here he is with the duck tank. Okay, time to turn this into the better of the two vehicle modes, and that's a very simple process, so I'm not even going to speed it up. Basically, you just unplug these pods from the side here, and they swing around, and this hole here will plug in over this peg here, and this peg here will plug into this bit here. So bring that around and straighten this out. And bring that in, and bring this in. And that's one side done, other side is exactly the same. Plug it in, plug it in, and plug it in. And then adjust these so that they're pointed downwards and inwards. And yeah, even with the broken tab, I feel like that looks solid enough. I don't think that's too big a problem. And there we go. That completes the transformation into the far superior of the two vehicle modes, and that is a kind of a dragster looking car almost. And I really, really like this. I love the kind of ridiculous shape of it. It kind of looks like a weird evil Batmobile with these enormous wheel pods in the front and the giant wheels in the back and this enormous possible spoiler, and it's completely ridiculous, but I am very fond of this. And I also love how, while the flying mode looked so kind of messy, this, I can pull this up a bit, this looks way more cohesive. Like, yeah, you've got some gap stuff going on if you look at it from the top, but like, it still works really, really well as a car. My only real gripe as far as the detailing and coloring goes is I wish these bits were silver like the back part of the car. It just kind of is unfortunate that the back is this really nice silver color and the front is just gray plastic. Not a huge problem for the robot mode or anything like that, but it's just a little bit like, eh. But at least it's not like patches of unpainted gray in various places in the vehicle mode. It's like in two very focused spots and a little bit back here, but like back here I think is fine. It's a little bit weird, the spoiler on the back, but this is what it is. I've seen a couple of ways of people doing this, like bringing these out and turning them up, which does make these look a little bit more like a proper spoiler, but then you've got these flaps hanging off the side, which is kind of eh. So that's why I prefer to rotate these forward and then fold these in to just clean up these flaps a little bit more. I do kind of wish that these flaps could do something else, but this is a rubbery plastic, so they're not going to have like hinges built into them or anything like that. As I was saying before, it's pretty much all the same detail that we saw in the flying mode, but now it's a much better shape. And I really like the detailing here. These two pods, they're split in slightly different ways because of the gimmicks, but they still look relatively symmetrical, which is kind of impressive, even though this does something completely different than this. There's also some really nice detailing just molded in around here. I kind of like this layered scale look along the sides and how that kind of starts here and works its way back. It's a nice detail. I think it's neat. And also I really like the giant back wheels. They're just enormous, chunky things. And color-wise, I also really like this color scheme. I mean, I absolutely respect Cybertron Megatron's color scheme. I do think it's a lot of fun, but like I said, I just prefer the black and silver. And here I think the primarily silver with some black, especially used for like accent lines in a few places, and a little bit of this like translucent orange and also some bright orange that you really only see in the back. I just think this color scheme looks not better per se, just cooler. More in line with what I was thinking in terms of like a Megatron, even though I know this is Galvatron. That's kind of what they did with the Unicron trilogy from what I recall, is that Megatron was like the weird brightly colored one and Galvatron was the one that looked more like Megatron colors. But yeah, this is just a really cool vehicle mode and it holds together surprisingly solidly considering all the stuff that's going on here. So yeah, I like it very much. It's a really cool vehicle mode. Like I said, it kind of makes me think of like an evil Batmobile. And I think it's really neat. All right. That's pretty much all I can say about it, so let's get this adjusted and do the next bit of size comparisons real quick. I'm doing such a bad job of planning for Spinister. All right, let me adjust this again. Now, admittedly, this vehicle mode is not really any bigger than his other vehicle mode, but I think because these pods are now kind of up front and together, it makes a much more normal shape because, you know, it's a car, so it's basically a rectangle with wheels. And that makes it a little bit easier to see just how big this is, because like the tapered nose of the other mode probably made it a little bit smaller from this angle, but yeah, this is a really big vehicle mode. And well, it's very tricky because these are both quite large, but yeah, here is Cybertron Galvatron with Cybertron Optimus Prime, and yeah, I feel like they're pretty evenly matched, at least in terms of size. And let me readjust again. And here he is with the duck tank. All right, time to turn this incredibly cool looking car into a pretty darn cool looking robot. And here we have Cybertron Galvatron in all of his spectacular glory, as far back as I can put him because he's very tall. And this is a really cool design. As I said, I think Megatron looks really cool too because it is the same design, but I really like the Galvatron colors here. It's very classic Megatron in that it's like silver black with some orange instead of red, but still some reddish highlights. And you get way more orange visible, or more prominent at least now in this mode, in the elbows and the wrists and the shins and the toes and the waists and the pelvis section and all that. The proportions are pretty decent, and he does look reasonably menacing. I really like how a lot of this stuff that's going on here is just kind of layering and reshaping what we already saw. I mean, there is some new stuff here, absolutely. Like the arms, pretty much the only bit of the arms that you really see in the other modes are like the insides of the arms and these kind of big puffy sleeve bits that are on the back. But you get the same section from like the top of both vehicle modes. I think it's cool how the cockpit slides up into the chest to make room for things to plug in back here. There's some really interesting stuff going on with the legs because you get the wheel pods here, but now these bits are layered on top of it. And so it creates a really cool looking kind of boot where you've got these very flat angular feet and these kind of flat angular spiky shin guards covering over the big wheel sections and these chunks here with the big spiky knee pads, and it looks really, really neat. A lot of the molded detail is the same, but now we're seeing it, from a different angle. Though there is some molded detail in the back section. Like the pelvis has some really interesting kind of molding and layering going to it. These kind of almost headlight looking details around the belt section. Again, I really like how the cockpit pushes up into the chest. I appreciate how these bits, they fold out of the way for the transformation and then they tuck in to kind of fill in the sides and cover up that joint that the waist is attached to. And then you also get some really nice detail on the shoulders, and these are some neat shoulders. I like the silver and black combination with a little bit of this kind of brown almost, which it's not quite metallic, but it might be meant to be metallic because like there's a little bit of this kind of brownish coppery color up here, and I think this is supposed to be the same color, but it doesn't really look metallic here, so it might just be a trick of the light. But I like that detailing, and also these little spiky bits that come out just to add a little bit more dimension to the shoulders. That's kind of fun. You can fold them in if you don't like them, but I like to leave them out because I just think it looks more interesting. As for the head, if you ignore the horns, or I guess fold them back, it has a very Megatron look. Like the actual shape, if you ignore the black bits, is very Megatron bucket helmet look. It looks really good. And I also think it's really cool how these horns fold away to make the head top nice and flat for the alt modes. But when they fold out, they also, like, the angles are just perfect so that they line up now with, like, what's going on in the front of the head. And it's just really cleverly designed. And I think the colors are pretty nice, too, with the bright silver head and then that metallic purple for the face. It's just a little bit of bright color to mix into what else is going on here. Unfortunately, no paint along the back of the head, but I feel like when you're looking at this guy, you don't really notice because you're kind of drawn to what's going on up front here. Now, while we're up here, let's talk articulation. So the head can rotate left and right. If you want to look up, you can kind of push it back down into the transformation cavity, and that's all you get. And also the head rotation is very limited because the shape of the head back here and these big hinges, it just knocks and crashes into those. So you get, like, that's about as much rotation as you're going to get. The arms can theoretically do the full 360 or actually do the full 360. I thought these were going to get in the way, but I guess not. So yeah, full 360. The arms can go in and out, but because of the shape of the bicep here and how it flares out a bit due to the design, this is as far up as it's going to go if you have the arm like this. If you rotate the bicep, then you can bring the arm up the full 90, but you have to have the bicep rotated this way, otherwise it's not going to work. And I feel like you get enough this way. I don't think that's totally necessary, but you do get bicep swivel, and you get a double jointed elbow that bends all the way up. That's pretty wild, especially for a Unicron trilogy toy, now that I think about it. The wrists are also on swivels, so that's pretty cool. Was not expecting that when I first got my hands on this guy. You do also get a waist swivel. Despite everything going on here, you can rotate the waist a bit. It can only go about that far until it's crashing into the back, but it's something. The hips can go out way past 90 because of the design and shape. You get a thigh rotation. They can go forward pretty much this far until the knee spikes kind of get wedged into things, but if you get the knee spikes out of the way, they can go up a little further. You get a knee that bends slightly under 90, but I think that's pretty decent. What is also kind of cool though with the feet is you can, it's on a very loud ratchet, but you can get a little bit of forward and backward tilt on those feet. That's as far forward as it goes. This is kind of what I find to be the best working neutral stance. And then this seems to work best for the vehicle modes. And you also get ankle tilt, which is pretty cool. Ankle tilt on a giant Unicron Trilogy figure. That's neat. I like that. Now let's talk gimmicks and accessories, because that's kind of half the fun of this guy. So coming around back and taking out his cyber key. And incidentally, for anyone curious, here is Galvatron's, I think, Galvatron cyber key with, I think, Optimus's cyber key, so you can see how those look together, I think. But anyway, you can use the cyber key in both of these pods that are hanging over his back. And incidentally, the pods have a rotation here and a rotation up here, so you can rotate this piece, or you can rotate this piece, and then there's a hinge here, so you can go in and out there, and hinge here for going in and out. So you've got some options in terms of how you want to display the back pods, which is good because getting this guy on a shelf with all this going on can be a bit of a pain. But anyway, get the cyber key and pop it in here, and that pops out this thing that springs out, and you get these spikes. And it's this little mechanism here that when you push it in, the spikes move. I've seen some photos where people give Galvatron the little spike thing like it's a gun, which I guess can work. But what I've found, and I'm pretty sure this is intentional and old news, but what I've found is there's a peg hole right here in the forearm, right in front of this wheel. And the shape of the forearm, it kind of has this kind of jag to it, and you notice a similar shape here. So if you plug this into his forearm, it actually kind of follows the shape of the forearm, and plugging it in with the front of the pod thing facing that way, it gives him this like arm spike thing, which I think looks really cool and is also a little bit reminiscent of his fusion cannon, just in terms of him having a big weapon attached to the side of one arm. You can put it on either arm too, so whatever your preference, you can outfit him with a big spiky arm. And I guess we'll just put it on this arm for now because this is the same side pod that it came from. This pod is a little bit different in that you put this in and it opens up this little door. And we're just going to put the key back here because we don't need it now. And so with this door open, you can pop this thing out. There's a little peg that sticks through the bottom here. If you push up on that, that pushes this thing up. So you want to push that up because it makes it easier to remove. And this will pop out, and we can close that back up. And now we have this thing, which will straighten out and give him a little gun. And this crank, if you turn it, makes the wheel spin like it's a Gatling gun, which is adorable. Silly, but adorable. If you wanted to, you could also plug this into his forearm, but the peg is really tight, so I don't really want to force it. But you could do that for like a fusion cannon style thing. Will it fit up here? It kind of fits up there, but the fist gets in the way, so yeah, just pop that in his hand, and that gives him a kind of a regular gun, which is It's a bit of a weird look for Galvatron or Megatron to have a gun just in his hand, but I think it's okay. This kind of offsets the fusion cannon thing, so it still gives you the impression of kind of classic Megatron or Galvatron, but at the same time is also its own thing, which is really cool. I think the main thing that really draws me to Cybertron Galvatron specifically, and I mean specifically Galvatron, is the fact that he's totally something different in pretty much every facet of his design. Like, look at this thing. This is not a classic Megatron or Galvatron design. But there are just the right number of nods to the classic design, like the kind of faux fusion cannon, just silhouette-wise shape, and the head shape, if you ignore the horns, being similar to the classic Megatron head, like that kind of thing, coupled with the silver and black color scheme that I think really kind of sells it more for me than the Cybertron Megatron design, which again, I think that's a really fun deco, but I just really like how this one works for my own preferences. Anyway, it's probably no surprise considering how, let me back this up a little bit, but yeah, it's probably no surprise considering how beloved, I guess, this figure is and how it's been out for a really long time that I don't really want to think about how long it's been out for, but just in case anyone watching this isn't super familiar with Cybertron, Megatron, or Galvatron, this is how big that robot mode is compared to the standard Deluxe Squad, and it is a big robot. Here he is with Cybertron Optimus Prime in his basic Prime mode, and let me readjust again. Here he is next to Cybertron Optimus Prime in his gigantic combined mode with his trailer. And that was another contributing factor to me preferring the Galvatron color scheme, is because I already had Cybertron Prime, and he's, you know, classic Optimus Prime colors. So having classic Optimus Prime colors and the classic Megatron colors, even though this is Galvatron, I just think this makes them work together as a pair. All right, let me readjust again. And get giant Prime out of the way here. And to finish things off, here he is with the duck tank. So that is it for Cybertron Galvatron. I really, really, really like this figure. He's definitely got some things that are a little bit like the fact that his feet only really have one worthwhile position for getting him to stand, and the back pods are a little bit of a hassle to deal with when trying to get him displayed on a shelf. But yeah, this looks great. I love the colors, and again, I know that Megatron has just a much more fun color scheme, but I really like this. This just screams cool to me. And I love how much it does that's different, and I love how much these colors kind of bring it back into feeling a little bit more classic. And that car mode is just gorgeous. It's ridiculous and overly sci-fi, but it is gorgeous. Anyway, that has been my look at Cybertron Galvatron. What do you all think of this guy? Or Cybertron Megatron? What do you think of this mold in general? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like any of the videos that I do and want to support the channel, there is the Patreon option. There's going to be a link in the description and also at the end card at the end of the video that will show you where that is. And there's just a $1 tier. It's the only tier I've got, but that will support the channel and also get you early access to videos and access to the occasional behind-the-scenes post that I make. Also, on the rare occasion that I do a poll, you can weigh in on polls. But other than that, thank you all for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.